limited to 1/5 of the world's surface, has challenged the sea since its time on Earth began. It has been a highway, a hiding place, a battlefield and a graveyard, a place of beauty and peace, and a place of ugliness and danger. In this new age, man has designed an atomic weapon that will operate beneath the ocean's surface. Other naval weapons, carriers, cruisers, and battleships, they slug it out in the open, while still others use the skies above the water as their battlefield. This is the story of the United States Navy's Sea Dart, the world's first supersonic water-based interceptor, designed and built to fly and fight beyond the speed of sound, designed to operate on its own special runway, 4/5 of the world. The story begins in the summer of 1946, a time of importance in aviation history. During this year, a jet plane flew from Long Beach to New York in 4 hours and a new world's record. Also in 1946, the first jet fighter in naval history landed on a carrier's deck at sea. And at San Diego, California, engineers took the first step toward the development of a jet aircraft that could land and take off on water. From their drawing boards came the initial plan. But like all new ideas, acceptance did not come easily. There were those who said jet aircraft could not operate on water. Landing speeds would be too great. Too much drag on takeoff. Too much shock on landing. Spray would drown jet engines. These men took all these problems in stride and came up with a plausible design. But it was all on paper. The program, sparked by research engineers dedicated to this dream on paper, moved into the model stage. Routine. Balsa wood instead of aluminum spars. Cloth skin, not stainless steel. $5,000, not $500,000. This model, 1/10 true scale in weight, length, and span, was called the Skate. Its performances under simulated flight conditions would furnish the information needed to do the impossible, opening up new fields in hydrodynamics and jet aircraft construction. The testing phase was routine but intense. To an outsider, the program might look like men at play. And in a way, the outsider would be right, because the excitement was there. 2 solid years of it. But this was no game. Each launching was preceded by hundreds of pages of calculations and estimates, and each launching meant revisions and corrections. New data in hydrodynamics, spray studies, and stall characteristics were evaluated, reduced, and added to the growing story. Two solid years of changes, each change in design bringing the aircraft closer to perfection. All of the airplanes represented by these 1/10 scale models would work, but the model that was selected would have to be perfect. And these men couldn't draw straws. Engines were added for flight evaluation, taxi performance. Small one-tube radios were installed in the models to give the engineers remote control, and structural changes were made to keep the models true scale and weight. And the testing went on. Each run made under different trim, attitude, and speed. Finally, after 2 years, tons of blueprints, and thousands of hours of work, a model was selected that met all the requirements. Tests were conducted on a proposed method of carrying and launching this aircraft. But while these tests went on, an event took place at Muroc, California that foretold the doom of the Skate. A land-based fighter made its first flight. This airplane, a supersonic interceptor, had several radical improvements in airplane design, foremost of which was the triangular or delta wing. Supersonic flight was routine. Although the engineers decided to use the delta wing, discarding the swept wing of the Skate, not designed for supersonic flight, the vast store of information proved valuable in the development of the supersonic Sea Dart. It was revolutionary in design. Hydro skis, developed by the National Advisory Committee on Aeronautics, were coupled with the delta wing, and this combination was compatible from the start. Here, in news photos of the first tests at NACA, the model was launched under carefully controlled conditions, and the hydro ski delta wing concept was found to be practical. Again, the hydro engineers were called upon to come up with the answers. They had help this time. The old Skate had cleared away a lot of timber, and the men were moving down a well-beaten path. There were a few pitfalls, and they had to be bridged. And here, in a model small enough to be picked up in a man's hands, lay the answers. What happens to a 20,000-pound airplane when it hits the water at 100 miles an hour? How can a pilot control the powerful thrust of jet engines on a liquid runway? How would it respond in flight? And what about spray damaging jet engines? These questions had to be answered, and the model was the sounding board. Testing went on, years of it. Emphasis shifted to hydrodynamics as new ski designs were tried, tested, and modified. Testing was rigorous. Different types of skis were mounted on a skeletal frame called a pantograph. Delicate and sensitive, each shock absorbed by the ski was pulsed back on electric fingers to be recorded for future reference. Carried by a powerful speedboat crammed with electronic gear, the engineers recorded ski penetration, planing angles, friction, and the many other unknown factors related to this problem in hydrodynamics. This was followed by the full-scale mock-up phase, and finally production was started on the prototype. More paperwork, more planning. And the Delta configuration began to take shape. And they're aluminum spars now, not balsa wood. Stainless steel instead of fabric. No more scale model engines, but the real thing. J-34 power plants capable of 8,000 pounds thrust. A complex electronic nervous system, not a small one-tube radio. transforming a dream on paper into reality, everything must be perfect. This is where know-how pays dividends. An airplane skillfully assembled in a hurry-up program quietly tempered by more than 20 years' experience in the construction of water-based aircraft. In December of 1952, under the cover of darkness, the research airplane was moved from its restricted area to a hangar a few feet from San Diego Bay. The giant was about to awaken. Few experiences on Earth which can equal the things crowding in on a test flight staff or the designers of a new airplane at a moment such as this. The lump is there in the throat. The anxieties slowly rise to an almost uncontrollable pitch. But there's nothing more that people on shore can do. No more time for another check. No more time for one last adjustment. This is the payoff. Here, for the first time in history, a supersonic seaplane met the water runway from which it was designed to operate. And as the Sea Dart moved away from shore, the hopes and the dreams of the engineers and craftsmen who made this moment possible rested in the hands of one man, the test pilot, whose mission it was to ride herd on the new airplane, give it treatment it would seldom get in actual use, take it to the breaking point, wring it out. Early testing was confined to San Diego Bay, the proving ground for other radical seaplanes. This plane was completely new. Her performance could not be predicted by comparing her with earlier designs. Except for 1/10 scale models, she was the first, and it was the pilot's job to wring her out. There were many items to be considered: taxi performance, vibration, stability, and the use of the water rudder, four-body spray rail, breaker strip, skeg. New names for new equipment. Only the pilot could tell if the instruments and switches were within easy reach. Only the pilot could tell if the ship would feel right to the Navy pilots who would be flying her. And on the taxi runs, the ship seemed to strain to rise into the air. But the pilot had to complete the checkout list before the go-ahead to take her up. On the 9th of April, 1953, the Sea Dart moved into position for takeoff. pretty sight to the people below, but there was more work to do. The flight test program was moved to the open sea, 5 miles off the Southern California coast. In the weeks that followed, many design improvements were made until one major problem remained. Pilot reports indicated the twin ski undercarriage could be improved. The engineers then decided to incorporate a single ski arrangement on the research airplane. Beginning, the advantages of this design were obvious. The single ski provided improved takeoff performance, lower airplane weight, less vibration. The pilots liked her. Her new engines kicking out 10,000 pounds of thrust, riding the water like a bobsled. Clean, deadly, fast. Fast enough to leave her sound behind her, and built to take it. United States Navy's Sea Dart. To be carried in man's new atomic weapon. To be carried undetected and to be launched with surprise against any aggressor from any ocean on Earth. To be launched from an unseen base without fear of retaliation. And in the role of a highly versatile interceptor, the Sea Dart can scramble in all directions from lakes, rivers, reservoirs, or bays. Full squadrons can be airborne within seconds and respond as a unit in an answer to a red alert. The Sea Dart. Who can name her designer? He is Legion. He is an organization of 1,000 engineers and 15,000 craftsmen, who alone can tell the story of the struggle, the disappointments, and the final triumph when the impossible took to the water and lifted off into the pages of aeronautical history.
This film is presented as part of Convair Report ZC-2061, Hydrodynamics Demonstration Report XF2Y1, Single Ski Airplane. The tests you will see were conducted both in sheltered and open waters, and no attempt has been made to eliminate unfavorable scenes. Comments made here were lifted in part from actual flight test operation reports compiled by the Experimental Flight Test Department at Convair San Diego. The first series of tests was conducted in San Diego Bay. All tests were conducted between October 1955 and January 1956. To better demonstrate spray characteristics at low speeds, this particular operation was filmed at 64 pictures per second. Speed of the Sea Dart is approximately 15 knots, and directional control is maintained using water rudder, aileron, and asymmetric power. Banking the airplane with aileron and water rudder is the easiest and most natural way to maneuver. The procedure is similar to speedboat maneuvering. On this 180-degree turn into a crosswind, water can be seen entering the inlet ducts. Extended taxiing at this speed range in crosswind conditions causes a salt buildup in the compressor section, which produces a decay in thrust. A freshwater injection system was developed and is now on the airplane. This new system successfully purges the compressor section of the salt deposits, correcting the thrust decay problem. Higher speed directional control is demonstrated by these S-turns. Pilots report that the technique of banking for turning is comfortable, easily learned, and practical at any water speed. Dragging the inboard wingtip in the water has no adverse effects. Here, salt water is drawn into the afterburner secondary ejector system and expelled through the primary ejector during the ski emergence period. This produces a rapid quenching of hot afterburner nozzle leaves, causing considerable warpage and shortening the life of the nozzle leaves. The secondary ejector extensions have decreased water ingestion in this area, but the problem still exists. On this series of runs, fixed elevator positions from 15 degrees down to 10 degrees up were used. This run was made with a 5-degree down elevator into the wind. Takeoff time following afterburner light-off was 28 seconds. This run, 10 degrees down elevator out of the wind. Takeoff time, 27 seconds. 15 degrees down elevator into the wind. Takeoff time, 24 seconds. 0-degree elevator. Mild longitudinal oscillation was encountered at this elevator setting. Takeoff time, 26 seconds. All runs were made for fixed-stick longitudinal stability evaluation. This run was made with a 5-degree up elevator setting. The final run was made with a 10-degree up elevator setting with a takeoff time of 31 seconds. The operational significance of the trim limits of stability established by these fixed stick tests is shown by the next two runs. Here, the pilot is using a stick not fixed technique, but holding trim attitude in the fixed stick unstable region. Takeoff times were 25.5 and 28 seconds, with takeoff distances of approximately 2,300 feet. A total of 21 takeoffs of this type were made without difficulty. These two takeoffs and landings were made with a 90-degree 16-knot crosswind. The wing-low crosswind correction method was used to hold the desired heading. Takeoff time from afterburner firing to liftoff was approximately 27 seconds. These landing characteristics tests were conducted in 10 to 12-inch wind waves with confused boat wakes. Optimum pilot technique was used during the takeoff runs, holding low trim angles to facilitate acceleration to liftoff. The first landing was made out of the wind with a touchdown trim of 20 degrees. The second landing was made into the wind with a 13-degree touchdown trim. The characteristic nose-down trimming at touchdown eliminates skipping, frequently associated with seaplanes. High rate of sink landings were conducted for landing load evaluation. Here, phototheodolite cameras recorded a 17.8 foot per second rate of sink. Maximum oleo load was 48,200 pounds. This landing was made at 14.7 feet per second sink with maximum oleo load of 42,200 pounds. The Sea Dart is designed for a maximum oleo load of 88,000 pounds. Following the sheltered water tests, operations were moved to the open sea 4 miles off the Southern California coast. This first operation was conducted in a Sea State 3 with primary swells of 2 1/2 feet running at 80-foot intervals. Wind waves were approximately 8 inches and the wind velocity was 8 knots. Primary purpose of the open sea operations was to determine the suitability for the Sea Dart to operate in unsheltered water. The landing was made parallel to the major swell pattern and approximately 90 degrees to surface winds. Touchdown speed was 115 knots indicated airspeed. Landing and run out were routine. At speeds below ski emergence, bow spray is deflected down and out by the bow spray rails. When the ski emerges, the leading edge of the ski breaks the water surface with little disturbance, and as the speed is increased, the general spray pattern moves aft. During the taxi back to a reciprocal heading for takeoff, no spray problems were encountered. For the takeoff, a technique was developed for optimum spray control. This involved heading the Sea Dart directly into the wind for ski emergence, firing the afterburners, and then making a sharp 90-degree turn to the desired takeoff heading. Liftoff was made in 26 seconds from afterburner light-off. Following the takeoff, a normal 360-degree pattern was made for a touch-and-go run. Landing loads were similar in magnitude to those encountered in calm water at a sink speed of 11 to 13 feet per second. Afterburners were fired at approximately 80 knots indicated airspeed during the landing runout. Operation in this open sea condition was considered routine. The second open sea operation was conducted in a Sea State 5. Primary swells of 6 feet were running at 70 to 100 foot intervals. Secondary swells of 2 feet were imposed upon the major pattern, and every 7th swell was between 8 and 10 feet in height. One 12-foot swell was observed immediately before landing. The landing was made parallel to the major swell and approximately 90 degrees to the surface winds. The water conditions were very severe and far beyond that anticipated in the operational concepts of the design. This entire operation was filmed at 64 pictures per second, which slows down the action of the sea and gives an impression of calmness where such a condition does not exist. Although an operation in such heavy seas is not one that a pilot would care to endure as a daily task, the operation was considered successful and should influence future design considerations. The Sea Dart was trimmed high on the runout, and although some pitch oscillations occurred which were uncomfortable to the pilot, the structural integrity of the airplane was not impaired. A taxi back to the point of touchdown was made at approximately 30 knots, 90 degrees to the wind and parallel to the swell. Taxiing in crosswind conditions at speeds of 10 to 30 knots, upwind spray from the forward section of the ski is blown inward and is occasionally drawn into the engine inlet. The amount of water ingested during a crosswind takeoff, even in rough water, does not constitute a serious problem. However, extended crosswind taxiing in this speed range will result in loss of thrust and engine reliability. At this speed, with the ski emerged, spray characteristics and stability were excellent in spite of the heavy sea. On the takeoff, parallel to the running sea, excessive up elevators were held which retarded longitudinal acceleration. This caused a series of premature liftoffs, and heavy impact loads were experienced in the skipping that followed. Structural integrity, in spite of the severe pounding, was not impaired. Final separation from the water was made 40 seconds following the afterburner light-off. Although the pilot reported the landing was within the operating limits of the airplane, the takeoff run probably approached the limit takeoff capabilities of the airplane for the existing thrust-to-weight ratio. The final landing of the United States Navy's experimental Sea Dart on the waters of San Diego Bay was made without incident. The landing concluded hydrodynamic testing of the XF-2Y1 single-ski airplane. Items considered were hydrodynamic resistance, longitudinal stability and control, lateral directional stability and control, landing stability and control, rough water, taxi and spray characteristics, dynamic and rigid body water loads, and engine and equipment operation. Regarding the ski arrangement, the results obtained from the testing and analysis of the data compiled during the testing indicates not a deviation from, but rather a strengthening of, the ski oleo concept. In concluding a 5-year program centered on a revolutionary design for water-based aircraft, the Sea Dart has brought aeronautical science to the threshold of a new era of flight. An era of water-based aircraft, free of complicated shore handling devices and excessive aerodynamic drag. The Sea Dart ably demonstrates the design possibilities for water-based aircraft with aerodynamic performance equivalent to land-based counterparts.